Moving on now to the markets. We were joined earlier this week by Oklahoma State livestock economist Derrell. We asked Derrell what's in store for the cattle markets as we near 2022, but we began the conversation by reviewing drought conditions across the U.S.
You know, it's wintertime, so we do have extensive drought across the country. The majority of the country is in some stage of drought or abnormally dry conditions. And again, at this time of the year, with the exception of wheat in the southern plains, which we are trying to graze, that's an active growing crop at this time of the year. But beyond that, we're not really trying to grow in many parts of the country. So, it's not so much of a concern right now. But the level of drought we have and the continuing dry sort of weather pattern that we have raises a very big concern as we think ahead 3 or 4 months into the spring. Certainly if these conditions continue and we go into the spring in these kind of conditions, we're going to have very serious implications very quickly.
Well, Derrell, you've written about the U.S. cattle herd numbers. If this drought continues to persist, how do you think that's going to impact 2022 numbers?
Well, of course, we're still waiting really to find out what happened for sure in 2021. We'll have those numbers about the end of January in terms of the January 1 inventory levels. But, we know there was some additional liquidation due to the drought in 2021. And the implications are, and the feedback I get from producers in these drought regions is that while they are, probably going to get through the winter with the resources they have available now, if in fact the drought does continue into the spring, they will be facing some significant additional liquidation pretty quickly next year. So we could see a significant level of liquidation if in fact conditions stay, the way they are going into the new year.
Derrell, let's talk about COVID-19. Of course, the cattle market was hit hard by that as we continue to face those challenges. Do you think we've overcome those challenges at this point, or where do you see that playing a factor in this market?
I think we really have finally. It took much of 2021 with the fed cattle market in particular. That was where the most residual effects were with the sort of disruptions and bulging we had of feedlot inventories early in 2021 combined with the continuing packer constraints that we had. It took much of 2021 to get through those. But by the end of 2021, of course, we saw the fed cattle market recover significantly in November and into the end of the year. So, I think we're finally to a point where kind of all of the pieces are in place for this cattle market to sort of move forward, barring, of course, any new developments or significant resurgence of any of these conditions.
Derrell, you mentioned we have not quite put a bow on 2021 just yet, but I want to get your thoughts on 2022 as we do look ahead. You mentioned the drought conditions and potential some other events that could disrupt the market, but what's your outlook on how prices are going to look in 2022?
Well, again, we are finishing 2021 in fairly strong fashion. We've had optimism building. We've seen it in cash markets. We're finishing the year with cash prices for all classes of cattle significantly higher on a year-over-year basis. Futures markets have a fair amount of optimism built into them for next year in terms of cattle prices. And that's our expectation, certainly, is that, with supply conditions continuing to tighten, we are in a tightening cattle supply situation. We do expect beef production to begin to reflect that in 2022 with a decrease year over year in beef production. And then we've had very strong demand through, many months of disruptions, but really surprisingly strong demand. And that continues with both domestic and international demand really helping to support these markets from a demand standpoint.
Derrell, we're having today's conversation before this month's Cattle on Feed report, but do you have any early predictions you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, it appears that we're going to see fairly strong placements again in the December report for the month of November. So we're anticipating, fairly strong placements. Marketings will be higher on a year-over-year basis, but that's largely because there was one additional business day in the month of November. And when you put it all together, the general expectation for the Cattle on Feed report is that we'll have an on-feed inventory still pretty close, but perhaps slightly below last year's levels.
Derrell, as we round out today's conversation, I want to give you the last word. What risk management or marketing advice would you like to leave our viewers with today?
Well, as we go into 2022, we've already said we're expecting higher prices. So, in terms of, profit potential in 2022, I think the revenue side of the equation looks, certainly more promising for producers at pretty much any level of the industry. What we are seeing, of course, is increased feed costs and input cost in general, but particularly feed cost, whether we're talking hay prices in many places, particularly in the drought areas, but in general, and also then feed grain and supplement prices. Feedlot cost of gains are significantly higher as we round out 2021 and go into 2022. So I think the real management challenge for producers in general in 2022 is going to be to focus on cost management, try to be in a position to take advantage of the higher cattle prices and enjoy some potential for increased profitability.
Derrell, always plenty to talk about when it comes to the cattle market. Appreciate you coming on today's program.
Very happy to do it anytime.